All right, welcome back to Reboot Camp, day 2 of week 1. Yesterday we had Kyle Christensen. Day 2, I know we're doing it. You're back. That's half the battle. Day 1, we talked all about setting goals, really stepping back, figuring out what you want to accomplish with your business. What's your big vision for it? Kyle, you had tons of great tips and a good homework assignment for folks. Now we're back with day 2. We're going to talk about more of execution. Let's get some stuff done here. So with that in context, how do we get leaders, and whether that's just a solo leader or whether there's a leadership team involved, what are your suggestions? How do you help your clients work through taking it from a big, hairy goal or a big annual goal and actually getting it, translating that into quarterly or even daily action?
It's a great question. And this is where things start to get a little crazy, right? Because I know it's probably antsy for you to lock yourself out for 4 hours and really think about last year and where you want to see your business, right? A lot of us maybe even did it in 3 hours. We rushed it, got it done in 2 hours, right? I hope you're still going to the gym as well, because I know you made that resolution.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, right. But now that we have this big list, right, you compiled all these bullet points of things that you want to change in your business. Maybe some of you went, oh, I don't know if I have enough firepower to get this all done in a single year. It might be 2 years, 3 years, etc. And also maybe in that session, right, you weren't with your leadership team. So there might have been things that you didn't foresee if you have some leaders and you have some delegation and separation between you and line level. So we need to bring them in. And we're going to steal an exercise. Do you remember the band Aerosmith, Jonathan?
Get a Grip was the first CD I think I ever owned.
No shit?
So yeah, this is like Alicia Silverstone, Liv Tyler in the videos, you know, totally. Do I remember Aerosmith?
So
absolutely, I do.
The band Aerosmith, they had a really, I was listening to an interview and Steven Tyler was explaining their creative process. And they had something that was just a beautiful nugget, and Jim Collins actually even caught on to this. They did something whenever they were writing a new album. They had something called a Dare to Suck meeting, where they brought all of the band members in, right? And they literally said, okay, what is the dumbest things that we could be doing right now, or the topics that we could be singing about or write songs about, right? And they put everything on the whiteboard, everything on whatever they use to write everything down, right? And what's really cool about this is it gets the creative process going, because, right, you can start off with things that are silly. You can start off with things that are really dead obvious, right? Like, oh, I need to sell 4 clients a month, and or 4,000 clients a month, right? Like there is no limits to this. But as that process starts going and you build a list that's large, I've had some where it's consumed like 3 whiteboards because we've come up with so many. It allows you then to kind of take a moment to step back, right? We've also removed the stigma of my idea has to be good, right? Because it's a dare to suck. It's a dare to put anything up there. And you start to look back, and then you do a keep, combine, or kill exercise, right? Which ones are just so outlandish and so dumb that we're just going to wipe off? Okay, we're not going to be a popcorn company. We're not going to start a coffee brand. We're not going to hire an assistant for every employee, right? Like all those ones start to come off immediately, and you pare that down. Then you start to notice a lot of people repeated themselves, right? What can combine are very similar. So you start to combine those a little bit. And then your list really gets pared down to that point where it allows you to gut check yourself as an owner to where are those things that you put on your own personal list that we thought about in that 4-hour exercise. How many of them did your leadership team, were they aware of as well, that had no action on them? And then when I go from there with this exercise is I start to work with my teams, right? Because a lot of times these lists, they're just not conceivable to get done in the first year. Is then you start to go, okay, a lot of these, right, are very related, right? It might be, hey, we want to, for example, I'm going to use we want to reduce the number of tickets per client per month because that's efficiency. But we also need to improve our PSA or our data entry process, or the ability to use our tools better. Well, I can't reduce the number of tickets and know what type of tickets my users are making without the data being better, right? So we have a prerequisite that needs to happen before the next one. So, right, you start to, right, when you look at all these ideas and you look at your own lists, by the way, most of your list is probably on the whiteboard from your team. 9 times out of 10, that's what happens. Now, all of a sudden, you're going, okay, this definitely has to happen Q1 because I can't get better automation written without the data that the problem exists. So I need to get that done in Q1, and then I need to tackle the in Q2 or Q3, the starts to automate and improve our efficiencies through some type of automation, right? It starts to naturally build out that timeline. Now I'm working, I have one example where I'm working with a client, fantastic client in, I believe they're in Central Texas, and no, they're Central Texas, but they're very niched. They have an objective to really define who they are to their target market, but they have a lot of hires that are needed to grow their team. Now, in this example, it's perfect because they also don't have the cash flow to hire everybody immediately, right? You always get the question that from my teams of, "Oh, Kyle, this is going to be so hard because it needs like 9 or 15 hires, right?"
Right.
Well, we don't need to do them all today. And also, can we be strategic, right? Because we talked about improving efficiencies. So that already is going to improve margins as long as that's accountable, right? And with those improved gross margins is how you hire more people from a sales, marketing, general administration perspective. So now you're starting to, right now you add that component, right? And maybe you say, hey, if we need to hire a sales manager or a marketing person, we do that first because that'll generate more deals, which then also gives us now more margin dollars to help hire more of our service-based employees. So you start to just assign some simple logic to what is the cart before the horse type scenario.
Right.
And you start to see a timeline as we start. I like to use sometimes sticky notes rather than a whiteboard because we can start to move them all around. And while, yeah, you may have one that you can't get to until like Q4 of your second year because of all the prerequisites that need to happen, right? This is kind of that reverse engineering we talked about in our last video, Jonathan, is it allows us to now go, okay, here's the logical steps of everything that needs to be done, as long as there's no shiny objects and some giant client just doesn't fall in our lap, right? That's really the process that really starts to hammer out, how do I take all these ideas? How do I take all the issues from my leadership team? How can they be transparent to give me those issues and they're not afraid to share with them for me? And then how do I put them into an order to start making them actionable, which was, right, how you kicked it off. This whole idea of this video is how do we make things hit the road?
Absolutely. And so now we have a list that is a basically to-do list. We have our action item list and we have the dependencies. We can assign ownership, we can assign deadlines, hold accountability, establish accountability, all that sort of thing. I know you had one other specific example that you were thinking about going through. Do you want to do that?
So I do have this one MSP where they are extremely vertically focused to the point where they are starting to really figure out even the clients that they're going to start to let go because they want to be so vertically focused. And really, this comes into that subjective nature, just to kind of put it out there of, right, when I'm thinking about what I want to be in 10 years, that question, the owner really decided that, he had an architectural background, he had an engineering background, and he wanted to serve that community because he loved hanging out with his entrepreneur peers that were in those firms because that's their educational background.
Perfect.
He really wanted to be that. So when we started to think about this, we started to do the same exercise, Dare to Suck. We talked about what does it take in order to become that category of one. When we think of the best technology company in architecture, who is it? And this same idea session, we did this, right? That means we need to be really close with Autodesk, right? That means that we need engineers that know how to service Autodesk. That means we need to have a partnership with Autodesk, which is, by the way, a software provider for those of you that didn't know for architects. And all of these other things started to come into play, like, well, now that our target market is architecture, okay, how do we market to them? What conferences do they go to? What crowds do they hang out in? What list do we need to populate for all this, right? And this same exercise has created all of those tasks, just like we're talking about, where now we have a complete idea and ownership structure of what every function of your company needs to do to support that vision of being that category of one. And now we're all focused, right? Now, I want to kind of take it to a 201 perspective here for you, Jonathan, which is, right, Kyle, it's great. I have this list. Basically, Kyle, I have a checklist saying that here's all the things I need to get done quarter by quarter. How do I keep accountable? How do I find time to get all this done? And this goes back to our video last time, which was intentionality, right?
Right.
You have to have intention, which means we need to be okay. And I go through this exercise with a lot of my clients. Block off time, dedicate time, be disciplined with time. Time is your only asset that you lose and you will never get back. So if you need to have your service manager have 3 hours a month or 3 hours a week blocked off to build a relationship with Autodesk and build playbooks on how to support that tool, then you need to do it and you need to allow them to do it.
If it's not on a calendar, it's not going to happen.
Exactly. And also, though, here's the other thing. And I see this all the time with my clients. You need to be disciplined enough to respect that block on that calendar. Do not pick up your phone and talk to that client or that engineer while you are supposed to be working on your business. It takes a lot of discipline to do that, right? Because fires are burning. Now, I use this metaphor a lot of, I want my clients to be more like Smokey the Bear, not the firefighter. Prevent the forest fire. Do not just sit there and put it out. So it's fun. You said SMART goals, Jonathan. In 2018, MIT did some research, and they found that SMART goals were not actually driving businesses forward anymore. They actually found that because of the way SMART was structured, if you were super disciplined with that acronym, the goals were actually never never a stretch. Because you would say, hey, my goal is to increase efficiency by 1%. Hey, I did it.
Right.
And beyond that, if you're a small business, you as the owner want to have your ear a little closer to the ground and being aware of where those objectives are, right? We keep using the term rock, but for those of you who don't know, it was a term by Stephen Covey where he did an exercise of putting rocks in jars, and it's fun to read into it, but the whole thing with it is, right, let's create things that are a little bit of a stretch. And also, I need transparency to know how far along your goal is, right? It needs to support the vision of the company. So MIT actually came up with an acronym called FAST, F-A-S-T. And the idea of these FAST rocks were that, right, and I'll kind of give them to you, is that they were frequently reviewed. They were still attainable, but also they were a stretch, and they were transparent, meaning you can see at any point where my objective is. And this actually increased a lot of productivity. I don't remember the exact number, but it was actually a little bit, it was a lot. I mean, it's MIT, so right, they went full scholarly on it.
Right.
But it's fun to look into anyway, because it allows you now to have a mechanism, right? Whether it's in your PSA or your project management tool or your meeting structures with your leadership team, to where those need to be presented. And what I'll do actually is I'll give you I have a fast rock planner actually that
Nice.
for people watching. I think, Jonathan, you could probably put a link in the description.
Absolutely, you can.
And they can download it free.
That's amazing. That's terrific. So, Kyle, I think that's a great. This is a great session for today. The homework assignment you gave yesterday was, okay, step back, have that 4-hour block where you're really going to think about your vision, your long-term goals, and then today, a homework assignment. Is it to gather the team and dare to suck? Is that what we're doing?
Let's do it. And if you want extra credit, those things that need to be done Q1 and Q2, fill out that fast rock planner. Have everyone go, what are the things that I need to do? What are all the micro tasks to get this rock done? And I would love to hear feedback too on how you guys grow and scale from this.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Kyle. And thank you for watching day 2. We'll be back tomorrow with our third day in our trifecta of getting organized and getting motivated and strategically planned for this year. We had our big picture thinking. We've learned how to, Kyle, thanks to Kyle, we've learned how to take steps towards executing. And now, day 3, we're going to talk about getting everyone bought in.
See you guys then.